Good morning, folks. Well, I hope you're not all tagged out with all these vinyl tags that are going around, because I'm going to do one. About, it was 3 years ago, back in 2021. I think it was Bill at the Vinyl Verse did a progressive rock vinyl tag. And we haven't had one since. So, being a prog head, I was going to generate one myself, and I was working on it. But then somebody got ahead of me, and that is Alex with his channel Beer and Vinyl. Great name for a channel. Not a channel I was aware of until John Bellamy pointed him my way last night, actually, or yesterday afternoon. So I don't have to do the hard work, but Alex has done all that and has come up with 20 great questions. Now, my view of prog is it isn't just the usual suspects, the progressive, the symphonic prog of Yes, ELP, Genesis, etc. It incorporates krautrock, electronic music, jazz fusion, avant prog, progressive folk, a whole host of weird and wonderful types of music. So I've tried to show that diversity in my answers. This is the second set of answers I've generated because I spent all last night working out what I was going to show. Then I thought I'd better look at the last prog vinyl tag and see what I did for that. And I discovered about half a dozen or more albums that were going to be shown again. So I've had to redo it. Anyway, let's get on because there's quite a bit to show. Question 1. Show a favourite debut album. Well, for that, I'm going to go to the Great Canterbury Scene and the wonderful debut album of Hatfield and the North from 1973. This is a wonderful album full of that quirky Canterbury jazz fusion, humour. The band were Richard Sinclair on bass and vocals, Phil Miller on guitar, Pip Pyle on drums, and the great Dave Stewart on organ, pianos and tone generator. You also had Jeff Lee from Henry Cow guesting on saxes and flute, and Robert Wyatt. There's the man himself on vocals on one track, and you had the superb Northettes on backing vocals. Wonderful first album. Shame they only ever did really 2 albums. That's that one. Question 2. Show a prog artist or album that you got into in 2023. Now, I wanted to show some progressive folk because I love my folk music. So last year, thanks to Mr. Rob Ison, I came across the band Lankum. And this is their latest album, False Lankum. And they are a wonderful folk, multi-instrumental folk band who incorporate a lot of ambient tones, drones into their music, which is a mixture of self-penned and traditional material. This is absolutely wonderful. I'm going to have to go back and check out their first 2 or 3 albums that they'd done before this, but they were totally new to me. Thank you, Rob. Wonderful, true progressive folk. Question 3, Golden Jubilee. Show a progressive rock album celebrating 50 years this year. So, released in 1974. And I include space rock in my definition of progressive rock, and who better at that subgenre than the magnificent Hawkwind. And this is their album, In the Hall of the Mountain Grill. Just Hall of the Mountain Grill. This is a more recent reissue where they spread it out to a double album. But this includes two of my favourite Hawkwind tracks, Psychedelic Warlords, Disappear in Smoke, and You Better Believe It, and also the superb Lost Johnny and Paradox. A wonderful album. Number 4, show a favourite live album. Now, I've said a number of times that the band that got me into music full stop were the magnificent Dutch band Focus. So one of the very first prog live albums, in fact, I think the first live album of any sort that I ever bought was Focus at the Rainbow. This one opens up as a trifold. Wonderful stuff. Wonderful band. With one of the best guitarists ever, Jan Akkerman. I always wondered whether this could have been expanded to a double. I don't know what material they were doing live at the time, but I would have loved to have had more of this. Superb. Question 5. Show a non-UK prog band. I could have shown hundreds. If you've watched my videos, you'll know I love my prog from all around the world. But I've decided to go to Eastern Europe and Hungary, and this is Omega with their 1975 album, The Hall of Floaters in the Sky. Omega were a band that incorporated at this point influences from people like Yes, Floyd, and to my ears sounded similar in places to the German band Eloy. This is the English language version of this album. I think at this point, 2 or 3 of the albums around this time, they did it both in their natural Hungarian and in English. But wonderful stuff. Next, show a proto-prog album, progressive music prior to In the Court of the Crimson King in 1969. This could be a little bit controversial because you'd normally expect to show something like Moody Blues, Procol Harum, Beatles, but instead I'm going to show the artist Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. This is his album Contactor for electronic sounds, piano and percussion, and Refrain for 3 instrumentals. This is from 1959 and 1960. You have albums like this one, Telemusic from 1966 and Mixtur from 1964. This features, as well as orchestra, sinus generator and ring modulators, and Procession for tam, viola, electronium, piano, filters and potentiometers from 1967. Now, he was obviously a big influence on the German krautrock scene, with artists like Can members Holger Kazuke and Ermin Schmidt having studied with him. I think Floyd, at their most avant-garde, particularly live, were heavily influenced. And on his, I think it's 1966 album, or 67, early 67 album, Hymnen, where he did weird and wonderful things to national anthems. On the French national anthem, he incorporated a voice repeating the phrase La Neuf, which is the 9. And where did we hear that? A year or two later, on the Beatles' White Album and Revolution 9, which also incorporated musical techniques that were pioneered by Stockhausen. So I'm going to go with Stockhausen as my proto-prog artist. Sorry for the glare on those. Question 7. Show an album with an epic song over 10, 15 minutes long or whatever you want. Right, this one, I'm going to go with the magnificent, wonderful Passion Play by Jethro Tull. This is my favourite Tull album, and the title track takes up the whole of the album with the exception of a short interlude with the wonderful story of the hare who lost his spectacles. I don't think Anderson particularly likes this album these days, but I think this beats any of their other albums, even Thick as a Brick. Totally superb album. Number 8. Show an album with a proggy song from a non-proggy artist. Now, this one, I was going to go and show Grateful Dead and Terrapin Station or Blues for Allah. Well, that was one I did last time. So I'm going instead with Queen. And they incorporated prog elements in their first 3 or 4 albums, particularly on the second album with tracks like March of the Black Queen. But I'm going to go with The Night at the Opera and the song The Prophet's Song, which is probably the proggiest thing they ever did and which is magnificent. Shame they didn't carry on in that vein. Number 9, an underrated gem / forgotten favourite artist / album that is underappreciated. I'm going to go with Bruce Palmer and his album The Cycle is Complete from 1969. Bruce Palmer obviously was a member of Buffalo Springfield, not a prog band. But this is an album of just 4 long tracks of mixing psychedelia, world music, fusion, and is absolutely magnificent. And I checked on Prog Archives, and it is included as a prog album rather than just a psychedelic album. But everybody should check this one out. It's absolutely brilliant. Number 9. Oh, that was number 9. Number 10, an album featuring your favourite prog vocalist. Well, my first thought was to do John Anderson, but instead I've gone with the distinctive vocalist Peter Hamill. Not for everybody, but what a wonderful vocalist. What emotion he puts into his singing. And I'm showing, obviously he was the main guy, the leader of Van der Graaf Generator, as well as having a long and prolific solo career. But this is Van der Graaf Generator's 1975 album God Bluff, which is my favourite of theirs, even more than Porn Heart. Brilliant album and a brilliant vocalist. Number 11, is it prog? Show an album you describe as art rock. For that, I'm going to go with an artist where he could have chosen quite a number of his albums as art rock, and that is David Bowie. Now, yes, sorry, I know it's David Bowie, but I've been saying Bowie for all my life, so I can't say it any other way. And this is probably my favourite of his albums. This is Diamond Dogs. Wonderful album. Definitely, I think, can be defined as art rock with brilliant tracks like Diamond Dogs itself, Candidate Sweet Thing, We Are the Dead, Chant of the Ever Circling Skeletal Family. Wonderful stuff from, what year was it? What year did this come out? I should know, shouldn't I? 1974. So that's my art rock artist. What's next? Show a solo album of an artist from a prog band. Well, I'm going to show an album that I think deserves to be up there as one of the classics of all time in prog, but never seems to really get mentioned. And that is the wonderful Rick Wakeman with his, I think most people seem to think it's his first, it's actually his second album. And this is The Six Wives of Henry VIII. Obviously, keyboard-driven prog, wonderful stuff. Like I say, I think this is a total classic, one of my favourite albums. Obviously, Wakeman was in the Strawbs and then obviously in Yes. So this is his solo album. Number 13, a jack of all trades, master of all. Show a genre-bending album or artist. Now, my first thought obviously went to Frank Zappa, but Alex showed him. So I'm going to go with, bear with me while I get these ready, the artist, excuse me, Les Claypool, who obviously came to fame with the funk metal band Primus, which I don't own anything by, but his music over the years has covered a whole slew of styles, from funk metal to progressive, psychedelic, jam rock, Zappa style stylings, covers a whole slew of genres. This is one of his bands, Colonel Les Claypool's Fierce Flying Frog Brigade. This is a live album. In fact, it was released as 2 single albums. And as you can see, he covers the whole of the Animals album. He does covers of King Crimson tracks. But he also formed the jam band supergroup Oysterhead with Trey Anastasio of Fish and Stuart Copeland of The Police. A wonderful band. Again, lots of jam rock and Zappa stylings in their music. And more recently, along with John Lennon's son Sean, he's had the Claypool-Lennon Delirium, and this is their album Monolith of Phobos, a double album. This is very proggy. So that's the artist I think that covers a lot of genre, bends a lot of genres, and is a wonderful bassist to boot. 14, the 80s, called Show an Album from the 80s. And you all know how much I love the 80s and what it did to most of my favourite prog artists. But there were some artists that did some brilliant stuff in the 80s, and this is one of my favourites. This is the French band Art Zoid and their album Phase 4, which I think was from 1982, I think. Can't see on here. Yes, 1982. They were a band in that rock in opposition, chamber music vein, a la Univers Zero, the wonderful Univers Zero. And this, for me, is their best album. So, yeah, they managed to produce great music in the 80s. Not Dead Yet, show a late career album. I'm going to show two, because they both came out this year and were both surprises in their own vein. Oops. Oh, I'll give up trying to get there. First off was the new Yes album, Mirror to the Sky. And like I said, this came out this year and was a surprise because it was so good. Best album they've done in over a decade, possibly a bit longer. The title track, the 14-minute title track, is particularly good. This is a massive improvement on the albums that came before it. And I played this a lot when it first came out. And it shows us, hopefully, life left in the old dog. And the other one I'm going to show, which was a total surprise, is the new album from the wonderful Univers Zero, the Belgian RIO chamber rock band. This is their album L'heure, hope I pronounced that right, which is their first album in 9 years. I thought they'd gone on permanent hiatus. The main guy behind Univers Zero is obviously Daniel Denny, who plays drums and keyboards. But he's helped out on here on certain tracks by Nicolas Denny, his son, on bass, Nicolas Deschamps on electric and acoustic guitars, and Kurt Buder on clarinet and bass clarinet. It's lost some of that chamber rock elements that early classic Univers Zero had. These are shorter tracks, more electronic in feel, more towards the rock end of things. Probably not up there with the classic period, but still very good. And I'd love to see these guys live. They're top of my list of bands I would love to see live. Right. 16, an artist you miss. Well, that could have been quite a few, but I'm going with the superb electronic musical artist that was Klaus Schulze. And this is his 1980 live album, I think his first live album. A wonderful artist. Started out in bands like Asherah Temple and Tangerine Dream, but as a drummer. Then went into electronic music. Probably the most consistent electronic music artist out there, far more consistent than in terms of quality than Tangerine Dream. Wonderful music he was doing right till his passing. So yeah, sadly missed. "17, Prog Goes Pop, show a progressive pop album." Now, I love my Italian prog, and PFM were the masters I think of Italian prog. But this is their album Passepartout, which, when was this done? I wish they'd put years on the 1978. Actually bought this copy in Italy. This was their third album with the vocalist Bernardo Lanzetti after Chocolate Kings, which was pure symphonic prog, and Jet Lag, which is more of a jazz fusion album. But for this one, the last one to feature Lanzetti, they went down a more acoustic poppy vein, Mediterranean style pop. But this, I love this album. I think it's brilliant. The writing's up there, the playing's up there, but totally different from what they produced previously, and totally different from what they did afterwards, to be fair. This is an outlier in their catalogue. Not liked by everybody, but I think this is brilliant. Show a prog album with cover art you love. Oh, could have been so much. I was determined not to do a Roger Dean cover, so I've gone with Genesis and A Trick of the Tail. I've always loved that cover. That's brilliant, and it's a brilliant album. It had no reason to be as good as it was, given they'd lost Peter Gabriel, but this and the next one, Wind and Wuthering, were the last great prog albums from Genesis. Like I say, I love that cover. Does it say who did it? Oh, it's a Hypnosis one. I didn't realise that. Not their usual style. Wonderful. An album you'd recommend to a non-prog fan? Now, I was going to choose Caravan's In the Land of Grey and Pink for its mixture of pop whimsy, beautiful melodies, and sidelong epics. But that was another one I'd chosen last time. So I'm going to go with another band that was briefly associated with the Canterbury scene when Richard Sinclair of Caravan joined. And that's the band Camel and their album Snow Goose. Not my favourite of theirs. I much prefer albums like Mirage and Moon Madness. But this is totally instrumental, melodic, not too complex. I think a lot of people would get into this. And finally, your favourite prog albums of all time. Well, this is where I'm going to have to show albums that I showed last time as well. And first up, we have the magnificent Close to the Edge by Yes. Just a perfect album. Wonderful stuff. Not much by any other prog band, I don't think, with the exception of the one I'm going to show next. And that anybody who knows me or has watched my videos will tell you, is the awesome Magma. And this, for me, is their greatest album, MDK, or Mechanic Destructive Commando. Wonderful Carl Orphean style music, massive chorus, brilliant bass playing from Yannick Top, great vocals from Klaus Basquiz. Superb. That and Close to the Edge, the two greatest prog albums for me of all time. So that's it. Thank you very much, Alex, for putting that together. Hope you enjoyed my response, and I will hopefully see you all soon. Take care.